Welcome back to State and Local Government and Politics, Module 4, Key Actors in the Policy Process, Part 4, Initiatives and Referenda, Media, and Corporate and Economic Interests. Initiative and Referenda. One way that citizens can affect public policy and even amend state constitutions or county and city charters directly is through the initiative process. In over a third of the states and in many local governments, the initiative provides citizens a process to vote on proposed constitutional amendments, statutes, or ordinances. The initiative is a form of direct democracy by which a petition signed by a minimum number of registered voters can force a public vote on a proposed statute, constitutional amendment, charter amendment, or ordinance. A statute is a written law passed by a legislative body, and ordinances are an authoritative decree or law set forth by a governmental authority. In many states, including Virginia, the legislatures can also refer a specific measure to the voters for approval or disapproval. This process is called a referendum and differs from the initiative process because the measure originates with the legislature. All of these types of votes collectively are referred to as ballot measures, propositions, or simply initiatives, depending on the states. A referendum is a specific measure put to the voters by the legislature for approval or disapproval. The initiative and referendum process is thought to have originated in the Greek city-states studied by Aristotle, and both methods of direct legislation by the people have been used in various times throughout the centuries in countries such as Switzerland, France, Australia, Ireland, the United Kingdom, and the United States. In the United States, the initiative and referendum processes were used in many states to both adopt and later revise their original constitutions. South Dakota was the first state to adopt the initiative process in 1898, followed by Utah in 1900, and then Oregon in 1902. Arguments commonly made in favor of direct democracy by its advocates include the following. It makes legislatures more responsive to public opinion. It allows citizens to take their policy preferences directly to the public for action. It stimulates public debate over important policy issues. It increases citizens' interest and thus participation in elections. It contributes to higher levels of trust in government. Critics of the initiative process offer the following counter-arguments. It often leads to the adoption of poor public policies because the public generally lacks the skill, knowledge, and or desire to cast informed votes during elections. And it promotes the tyranny of the majority riding roughshod over the rights of the minorities, and is potentially dangerous for disadvantaged minority interests. It often does not reflect the will of the people because those who vote on initiatives often are not representative of the population at large. It is controlled by the very interest, that is special interest, that it originally sought to circumvent, and it does not contribute to more responsive and accountable legislatures. Citizens can directly or in some cases indirectly influence the governmental process through recall provisions. This citizen empowerment process allows registered voters to petition to recall elected and in some cases appointed officials through popular election. Most states allow recall elections for local government officials. At the state level, only 18 American states permit recall elections to remove elected or appointed officials. Media. The mass media play an important role in state and local government policy processes. In the U.S., children spend more time in front of television sets than in school, and only a few years ago, more than two-thirds of the people in the country reported they receive all or most of their news from television. Today, in 2021, more than 8 in 10 U.S. adults, 86%, said they get their news from a smartphone, computer, or tablet, often or sometimes, including 60% who say they do so often. This is higher than the portion who get their news from television, though 68% get news from TV at least sometimes, and 40% do so often. Americans turn to the radio and print publications for news far less frequently, with half saying they turn to radio at least sometimes, 16% do so often, and about a third, 32%, saying the same of print. 10% get news from print publications often. A 2017 Pew Public Opinion Study reported the following trends. The gap between online and television news consumption is narrowing. The use of mobile devices for information continues to grow. Older cohorts are driving the growth in mobile news use. 67% of Americans get at least some of their news on social media. The less educated are increasingly getting their news on social media. About a third of Americans say they often see made-up political news online. While social media use is increasing, Americans have low trust in information from social media. The most common pathways to online news are visits directly to sites or through social media. A 2018 study by Pew found that the audience for nearly every major sector of U.S. news media fell in 2017, with the only exception being radio. The evening audience for both local and network TV news declined 7%, while for cable it fell 12%. Meanwhile, digital native news sites audiences declined by 5% in terms of monthly unique visitors in 2017, and the circulation for U.S. daily newspapers, whose audience has been steadily declining for several decades, fell by 11% that year. Corporations and economic interests. Businesses and multinational corporations are another set of actors that are extremely important in the political life of state and local government. Business enjoys a privileged position in American politics, generally, and in state and local governments in particular. In capitalist or market-based economies such as ours, it is private corporations rather than the government that run crucial sectors of the society. While virtually all political scientists agree that business interests command a great deal of influence in state and local government, there's disagreement among social scientists on just how much influence business interests exercise in the policy process. Some scholars make the argument that corporations dominate the policy process both nationally and internationally, while others argue that business is just one of many powerful interests involved in the policy process. American political scientist Robert Dahl persuasively argues, however, that those who own and control corporate and personal wealth pose special problems for democratic systems and public policy. Ownership and control contribute to the creation of great differences among citizens in wealth, income, status, skills, information, control over information and propaganda, access to political leaders, and other differences like these help, in turn, to generate significant inequalities among citizens in their capacities and opportunities for participating as political equals in governing the state. This observation suggests that in the United States and other market-based economies, business interests represent not merely one of many contending interests in state and local governments, but represent the most important actors involved in public policy making in those governments. In Part 5 of Module 4, we'll discuss political parties and elections.